Hello, everyone. It is now 6:30. To honor our time together, we are going to begin. We have some more that are joining us. We're so happy to have you. I am so happy to be here with you all. My name is Shemekka Ebony, and you are at the Community Engagement Academy. We are here in partnership with the city of Asheville to create some space for us to intentionally engage together and come up with some strategy and better practices around meaningful engagement here in Asheville. Next slide, please. During our time together today, we really want to maximize this as a space in which we can all learn and grow together. Our overall goals of the Academy is really centered around understanding and co-design community engagement strategy and really centering with people with lived experience expertise, leading the way and making recommendations based off better practices and lived experiences. I wanted us to take some time now that we're here at March 11th to dig deep. We're hoping that those of you that are joining us tonight or viewing this have made that internal personal commitment that you are already identified as a person with lived experience in your community and you are a person that people trust and maybe are connected to that will have a chance to lift up what we're talking about in a meaningful and way with intention. So I want to take some time for us to share your name and the following in this session. Please take a moment. We want you to answer 3 questions as well as sharing your name. And I want us to have an engaging conversation around this. So you can choose to put it in the chat. You can answer all 3 questions in chat. We'll read them. If you want to unmute yourself and introduce yourself and go through and share your truths about these questions, we want you to welcome you to do that as well. And then also, for those of you that may be jam boarders, I don't want to leave you out. So if Jamboard is your thing and you're familiar with that tool, we want to make sure that we can share this content with you in that capacity, so that no voice is left unheard. So I will put the Jamboard link in the chat, and if you want to engage on there and share, um, we want to connect with everyone. We want to know who's in the space, and I want to open it up. I'll begin it. Again, my name is Shemekka Ebony. I am in partnership representing I Am Brilliant as a firm that has been brought to back to Asheville from our fall engagement to engage you all continually around capacity building when it comes to community engagement. What makes me brilliant is that I'm passionate about connecting people with solutions and growing capacity for leadership. One thing I expect to gain or give at this academy experience is creating space in what it means to show up in your authentic truth and that it be welcomed, and something that organizations and institutions learn to identify as a necessity when it comes to systems level transformation. A shared agreement that I'm very passionate about, and it's oftentimes the centering of any groups that I convene, is we are all in this together. And I'm hoping that we can utilize that as a building block for our experience together today. So I want to open up the floor to anyone that would like to take a moment and introduce yourself to us and share with us out of these 3 prompts. The floor is open now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brandon Oliver. I represent Black Men's Monday support group resolution, a resolution-based group here in Asheville. I am brilliant because of my passion and love for being a father and my openness to hear other people out. I'm sorry. What were the other questions? I hope to gain. I hope to gain out of this a connection and a network and another sense of openness. This is something that our group focuses on, and I'd like to learn better ways to go about doing it so that everyone feels comfortable truly sharing your inner thoughts with some people that possibly understand. And one shared thought that I have is that we all can use some help. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon, and thank you for lifting that shared agreement into the space. We all can use some help. How powerful. Who's next?
All right, I'll go.
Thank you.
Okay, so my name is Dwayne Mcafee. Um, I left here at the tender age of 19, my hometown. I come back 41 years later, and I am more disturbed and more troubled by what I see today than what I witnessed when I left here 41 years ago, now 43 years ago.
Mhm.
So, what makes me brilliant is me. I'm unstoppable. So, the things that that I expect to gain or to give to the academy, I have no idea. I haven't experienced it yet. So I come with openness. And if the academy can provide a vehicle for me to do what I need to do, then I'm all in with the academy. If it cannot, I'm going to find another venue, another avenue. I will not be defeated. So, um, shared agreement is that if I can bring positive energy to the group, I'm with you 100%. If I cannot bring positive energy, I'm out.
Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you. Powerful. Certainly important, especially when we think about the gifts that we are and the assets that we bring. Like all of us have something inside of us that we're passionate about, we're deeply connected to. And when that thing illuminates within us and we can connect it in our community with that propelling energy that you mentioned, we have a framework for something sustainable so that it's not just helping this current generation, but it's helping generations to come because we're really, in some essences, in many essences, creating something that doesn't exist. And sometimes that means tearing down and in some cases blowing up or taking a guided hand and helping someone wherever they are so that we can all come into this communal journey together. So we welcome your truth and transparency in this space and totally understand if at some point if there is a disconnect that you are prioritizing and value your time to choose to walk another path. And I honor that and celebrate that and thank you for that. Who else do we have in the space? We're taking some time now. I want to amplify what's going on in chat. Jeremy Lett shared commitment to the community and bettering the community that I live in, adding engagement tools and knowledge, intent and impact both matter. Absolutely. We have Grant Millen saying that Jamboard is a valuable tool. I agree. Um, we have Mike Wasmer, and I am brilliant because I am a creative problem solver. I hope to gain an ever greater understanding of lived experience of my neighbors. As a team, we are capable of accomplishing what individuals believe impossible. Absolutely. We welcome that into the space. Is there anyone else that would like to introduce themselves and talk about these prompts we have to get to know one another better? The floor is open to you at this time.
This is Grant Millen.
Hi, Grant.
And hey, I missed I was on with you all for the orientation, but that looks like a really great group. And so what makes me brilliant is I help people shape the future. And I came up with that not that long ago, really, within the past year. And I found a really important leverage point to work on that, which is a monument that if the Vance Monument ends up staying in place, I hear that the city council is going to vote on that at this upcoming meeting on the 23rd, maybe.
Yeah, Grant, that's not what we're talking about tonight. We want to know what makes you brilliant. We
Okay,
want to
let me
know
finish.
one thing you expect to gain or get
Let me
the
finish.
academy
Yeah,
experience, but we can't talk about the Grant Monument during the academy.
Vance Monument. Let me finish that. So we need something there that is about the future as a counterpoint to the Vance Monument, and I'm working on that.
Okay.
And it was something to expect, to gain, or give to the experience. Just really interested in people who are taking another look at this issue of civic engagement. And I'm really interested in being there with you all on that. And we are all in on this together. We've got one future. It's all of us, and it's been looking pretty shaky, but we can come up with some other directions.
Thank you, Grant. I certainly appreciate you lifting that up and love that we're setting that intention and that shared goal that we are all in this together. We have Michael Hayes saying, sharing, I am brilliant at creating avenues for collaboration to better serve our community. We also have, I hope to collaborate with more community-minded organizations and respect everyone's authentic truth. Rob Thomas says, I am brilliant because I'm not afraid to use my voice to create change. I expect to gain wisdom from those with me in this work and share my experience. Thank you all so much for amplifying this. This is powerful and something important for us to look at and consider as we're moving forward, as we're thinking through how we're collectively with intention coming together in the academy. Is there anyone else that wants to share? Okay, yes.
Hi, my name is Dorothea Williams, better known as D. Williams, and I kind of wrote down a little bit. I just said, what makes me brilliant is that I'm clever and I know how to survive and I know how to make money. And the only reason why I know how to do that is because I came from a background where we had to, and I know how to show other people how to and how to achieve results. Most of the problems we have are qualitative and quantitative, and basically I've used my understanding of numbers, both accounting and data, to change paradigms for people, especially marginalized people. I'm here to just share what I do have, if you want to call it brilliance or you want to call it cunning or whatever, so that other folks can replicate maybe. Just want to give some of my time and some of my experiences. We've accomplished quite a bit, especially from a policy level with Asheville City Council, from community benefits agreements to whatever, and brought some tangible benefits. The shared agreement I'd like to talk about is that we just want to see some financial assistance for a budgetary process. You can call it participatory budgeting or whatever else you want to if we reimagine policing, but still it implies that the people have a voice in it and that they actually help to shape it and just have tangible deliverables and not just a final report. So that's what I'd hope to bring.
Thank you. We welcome you into the space and certainly welcome your input, your expertise, your lived experience, your voice, and your values. This is going to be a part of the budget engagement. You're going to have an opportunity to amplify things around the budget. And I'll have Christine, my partner, her fellow firm, is doing the front-facing budget engagement directly, and she'll be on a little bit later to talk about those dates and how you can get involved and how your voice can be captured and your truths be noted in that process. So thank you for lifting that up. That is a part of what we'll talk about tonight too. Is there anyone else that wants to introduce yourself and share before we transition into the meat of what we're doing tonight?
My name is Bernard Oliphant. I'm here because I believe that iron sharpens iron. And looking at the group that is assembled, I see some very sharp people and some sharp iron. And I just want to be able to share with them as they share with me. And in looking at part of the shared agreement, I understand that if we speak with truth and love through power and honesty, that will make us all accountable and responsive to each other. And we'll move forward as a strong, unbreakable force.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bernard. We welcome you in the space. Speaking your truth in love and accountability is powerful. That accountability piece is sometimes the hard pill to swallow, sometimes when it comes to leadership and engagement. And so I welcome that and a shared agreement and believe it is very important. One thing I wanted to lift up, I know for those of you that were able to make it to the info session back in February, we talked about an overall vision of, not only what the city would like to support around a community engagement, but also what you as the residents were interested in, what community engagement looks like, what is needed. And there was a lot of sharing from the community that an opportunity for an intergenerational collaboration in some form or fashion would be important so that we could hear from many of our elders that have been doing community engagement or involved in this process from the 60s up until present time, and then also giving some opportunity for our young people to learn and teach and share. So I'm hoping that tonight what we can propose in some work that we do together can reflect the intergenerational vision that you all shared and informed as something that was important to you all from our info session that we had in February. So I want to, for those of you, this may be your first time seeing me, I want to kind of report back out to you all when I first began to have relationship around community engagement was in the listening sessions that were held last year. And so I wanted to give you all a report back on what we heard when we held those listening sessions, whether you came to a virtual one or you came to one in person and we met face to face in September. I want to share with you not only some components of our engagement report that reported out to the city manager that was reported to city council. You can find that recording on the City of Asheville YouTube page. It's going to be under September 22nd. But I wanted to give you all a glimpse of what that experience was and summarize it, which will be a much shorter version than that report out from the 22nd. So next slide, please. So here's where we'll have our video, and this is a summary of our experience. Hello, Shemekka Ebony here, creator of I Am Brilliant, and I'll be narrating this video experience today. I, as well as Christine Edwards of Amplify Consulting, are virtually returning to Asheville to continue the community engagement journey alongside you, the community, and our partners in city government. We would like to thank you for finding time to continue on this journey of reimagining public safety with the city of Asheville as staff seek to advance racial equity through this year's budget process. Last fall, city government sought to understand the community's vision for a safe community. As a part of that engagement, staff sought your input to inform how service delivery might look different. In addition to the general online engagement, I Am Brilliant Amplify Consulting intentionally collaborated with community leaders and influencers to capture the voices most impacted by inequity and most often underheard in public engagement. Today, we're taking a moment to reflect on the input you shared with us last fall during the Reimagining Public Safety engagement and how that input informed the first round of budget adjustments made in September of last year. We will follow this video with discussions on how city staff might continue to adjust the way it delivers services through this year's budget process. Now, back to the Reimagining Public Safety input we received in September. Here are a few of the highlights from the engagement process shared at the September 22nd City Council meeting as a result of our community engagement report submission. We asked, what does safety mean to you? We heard freedom, equal access to resources, racial equity, ownership of space, representation, mutual respect. We asked, which areas are a priority and which should be reallocated? We heard violent crime, de escalation training, increase in community engagement, increase in budgetary transparency, increased collaboration between APD and mental health providers, nuisance crimes would reallocated, and crowd control. We asked, who's still missing from the conversation? We heard LGBTQ residents, youth, teachers, homeless, seniors, diversity, and more Black Asheville residents, those experiencing the digital divide, BIPOC APD and law enforcement, low income, people with mental health needs, addiction, partners, service providers, people with disabilities, people impacted by crime, justice involved, businesses, and people who value law enforcement. Here are some of the ways the City of Asheville is continuing to prioritize advancing racial equity in your community. Let's begin with the city's 6 focus areas for the fall 2020 budget adjustments and the intended impacts via equity lens. Nuisance response, data management and transparency, community engagement and outreach, homeless outreach, police reforms and policy, training and recruitment. For a more detailed City Manager's Report, please visit the City of Asheville's YouTube channel and view the City Council meeting from September 22nd, 2020. In addition to these actions, the City also has collectively held listening sessions with community, enacted the first round of budget adjustments informed by the Reimagining Public Safety listening sessions. Asheville's 30, 60, 90-day plan to respond to Black Asheville's demands, which includes reimagining public safety, transitions into a sustained effort advancing racial equity in Asheville, a more sustainable strategy for the long haul, as City Manager Deborah Campbell envisioned and shared last year. Educating city departments on the importance of applying racial, social, economic, and environmental justice lens to the budget proposal process. Taking the input we've heard today and using it to work through departments to raise up things that we can do in this budget cycle to address social, economic, and environmental justice through the delivery of city services. Checking in with the community on budget ideas to get feedback on the impact of the ideas. Building community capacity for engaging in city decision making. Engaging vulnerable populations regarding the city's climate justice initiative. Business inclusion, race, and gender conscious policy. For reflection, there are many city leaders and residents committed to continue advancing racial equity in Asheville. Thank you, residents and leaders in the city of Asheville involved in this process and those ready to get engaged. Remember, I am brilliant and you are too. So, for those of you that are maybe this is the first time you are engaging with us, we want to welcome you into the community engagement space. We are still adding people as they're coming in. So, I want to take a moment just to give some time for reflection. Were you all involved in the first session? How did this hit for you to kind of get this review? Had you had an opportunity to look at the report out back in September after that initial engagement? I just want to give a moment to have a check in with you all.
Okay, this is Grant Millen. I was a
Hold on,
participant.
hold on. Grant. I saw that D Williams put her hand up. I want to create space for that for her inside of this whole situation. I think Shemekka actually nodded to her.
Go ahead.
D, I would encourage you to be a bit more forthcoming, but go ahead.
Thank you.
You're muted right now. Let's see if we can.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'll be brief.
Okay,
There were
there you are.
several of us who collect data under the Black Data Initiative here, demographic data, economic and demographic data for African Americans specifically. And we have had certain focus groups. And what we do from time to time is send city council position papers. And several of those positions were adopted, such as removing SROs from the Asheville city school systems and reassigning those funds. Also, Cahoots, a program that we'd like to see implemented here that focus deterrence for folks who are problem makers. And I think they are engaged with that. So we kind of formed a group that is kind of more proactive in terms of having input. So that's all that I would say. We did that from the data that we collected. So, and we were able to have input. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you for lifting that up. Grant, would you like to share?
Was that Rob that said, hold on?
Oh, you have the floor now.
All right, but that's a question. Did Rob say, hold on, Dee needs to talk a minute ago?
I'm not familiar where it came
No, that
from.
was
No, it
not
wasn't
Rob.
Rob.
That was Ty Johnson, community member, and D. So yes.
Ty. Hi, Ty. Yeah, I participated. I'm going to look for the report. I think I've seen it. I think it's a PowerPoint maybe.
Mhm.
And I hope I'm not the only person who brought up persons with disabilities. And by the way, that's a UN term. It's different for many people. We're not using that term, persons with disabilities. We need to here in City of Asheville, Buncombe County, and with the state of North Carolina. I believe we'll find that a lot of people in poverty are persons with disabilities. It's pretty obvious that it's mental illness and substance abuse. Substance abuse is a disability. And disability, persons with disabilities are all genders, races, sexual orientations, and creeds. I don't work for a disability issues nonprofit. I've just been pointing that out. And okay, Mike. Thanks, Mike. I've just been pointing that out, and I don't know when we'll see a change with City of Asheville policy towards persons with disabilities, but it's big. The next thing I'll say is that when it comes to violent crime, fentanyl I keep seeing fentanyl stories in the news, and that's really nasty. It's going to be a real unpleasant piece of the story with reimagining public safety. And I've asked the APD for a report on fentanyl issues in Western North Carolina, obviously focusing on Asheville. Have never heard anything back on fentanyl. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for sharing. We definitely appreciate and value your voice and your lived experience in the space. And thank you for amplifying the needs for people with disabilities and being a representation of that. I would hope that we can amplify what's needed as a collective here, because you all are some brilliant and amazing people. And what I wanted to take a moment to share is to talk a little bit about how we'll be spending our time together today. The goals that I envision to propose for our collective engagement is deepening the understanding of people with lived experience, deepening our understanding around community engagement. Many of you are experts at this based on your experience and maybe your professional experience and maybe your lived experience in Asheville, and we want to welcome that sharing space with you all. I want to also identify ways that residents are currently engaging with examples like the Engagement Hub, as well as identifying ways of engagement that could be improved. How can we make it better? How can we make sure that really everyone has that accessibility to have space at the table and their voice heard? And then also lifting up an upcoming budget engagement opportunity. I want to lift up for the Academy. We ask for everyone's availability to be able to come to as many of the sessions as possible. We wanted to create an opportunity where we could saturate information, saturate collectivism among one another, not only to be insular in creating something else to do, but creating a hub while we're convening to share these experiences of what you could be working on that could benefit tools and assets that you all have, as well as setting an intention. We'll talk about some opportunities that there may be for long-term relationship building around engagement. And we want to create that space. Many of you know each other. Many of you are seeing each other in the field, in the community, at city council meetings already. And then some of us may be new to it and really want to know how to get involved. Next slide, please. So with this, we want to go over some shared definitions. We lifted this up in the intro session, but I want to take some time to kind of reintroduce it to us as we're building together now. Community, we're going to have a shared definition that it's a group of people with shared interests or values who share an environment or values or interests together. We're talking about community engagement, and capacity building in this. So this is what we're building community around. Community champions in this case that we'll identify are people like yourselves. It's a community resident with lived experience with or who is most impacted by an issue. And community champions are also community workers and people with lived and shared experiences. When we talk about community engagement, it'll be from a shared, informed space of a process involving individuals in the decision-making processes of an issue that affect them. This includes activities that facilitate an informed dialogue amongst participants and encourages them to share ideas and opinions for decision-making. In this case, we have a budget engagement session with several meetings in which we are seeking to engage community. What we'll be talking about tonight, yes, I see your hand is raised, Mr. Bernard. Right after Spectrum Engagement, I'll give you the floor. With Spectrum of Engagement, it's different types of community engagement that we'll talk about. Some of them are frameworks, some of them are models. We'll just look at a few to kind of get an understanding of what this language is across the country and outside of the country as well, as far as how we self-align with what Asheville wants to be for their community engagement strategy. Mr. Bernard, I wanted to give you a moment to share.
Yeah, I was just reflecting on the term I am brilliant because I'm learning how to listen. And I saw Mr. Rob Thomas raise his hand and we missed it. So I would just like to hear what he was going to say.
Oh, thank you. I can't see everyone's face, so thanks for catching that for me. Rob, is it something that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was gonna give feedback on the engagement that you all did over the summer. I took part in that, and I don't remember the young woman and the young man's name, but I spent most of the day at the Reed Center when they were there. But yeah, I think that yeah, Christine, that is right. But I think that y'all did a great job organizing that, like I told them. But I think there were several issues to why we only had 85 Black community members in attendance, because it was completely accessible to a lot of us, and then a lot of us were just completely disengaged from the whole process that was going on. And I don't know, I really don't want to make my feedback super long, but what I was going to get at, I think that the underlying issue is that I think more resources and support needs to be thrown towards community engagement at the end of the day. Like, you can't create a couple meetings, at a couple different venues throughout weekdays when a lot of people have to work and expect a large amount of attendance from the most common people in Asheville, those with working jobs. And like I said, I think you all did a great job for the resources that you all were given. But a lot of what I do is direct engagement in the communities, door to door, having conversations in these communities. And that takes resources. We hire community members to do it with us. We compensate individuals for participating in our surveys. We put a lot of resources towards it because we feel like their input is the most valuable thing that we get to lead our organization. I was just going to add that.
Thank you for adding that. I absolutely agree with providing ways and means for those with lived experience expertise that are sharing and are giving content and information, that time be valued in some way, which is why even in the fall engagement for some of the community members that were talking in neighborhoods, engaging young people online, my firm provided compensation as an honorarium for their time, because I am a strong advocate of providing some sort of value gift. I can't give you what you are worth, but I feel like from my heart to your heart, really, if we're in this together, then the practice of it does show up monetarily, as well as our gifts and bartering and skill sharing that we give. And so I honor that in this space as well, that we must continue to prioritize that and lift that up when we are working with organizations and institutions that are seeking to engage, that this honor and this value add from community organizations to community partners have to be part of the conversation, has to be prioritized. So thank you for lifting that up. And we want to honor that in this space as well. We also have Michael listing childcare resources during the meeting are vital for creating space for members of the community. Absolutely. Absolutely. Being sensitive to the time, being sensitive to the location. I mean, we all got thrown a left hook, honestly, trying to navigate what meaningful engagement would look like in a digital world in the midst of a pandemic. So I just want to say, first of all, for those of you that have been frontline workers, that have been in the community, still going door to door in the midst of this pandemic, providing support and services, thank you for your service. Thank you for the commitment to keep everything moving as it could when we didn't have all the resources and we didn't have all the access. And I'm hoping that we can build together with intent as we're building community here during these times, that we'll be able to identify what supports that you all have among one another and what shared resources and what assets are among each other right here on this call, to know where your safety nets are, to see where the ecosystem is and illuminate that as part of the pathway. So thank you for bringing that up. Is there anyone else that wanted to ask any questions or thoughts around our shared definitions, or give a chance to reflect? I can see all your faces now. So if you want to put a thumbs up, hands up to let me know that you have a question or comment, we welcome you throughout this engagement. Awesome. Next slide, please. So if we keep it simple, right? If we looked at this from a standpoint of 3 things that we can do, we're going to go over a high level version of what these 3 things are when it comes to identifying our community engagement process. This language that we're using tonight is going to be train the trainer level, as well as if I'm talking to a leader of an organization, or leader of a family, or leader of a community center, or leader of an institution. So we want to make sure that making no assumptions on who we're talking about and who our target audience is when it comes to amplifying those that have been impacted in some way with inequities. I want to make sure that we lift this up as a shared understanding of why we're here and what we're identifying as people with lived experience. Next slide, please. So who are people with lived experience? We want to do a quick video just to go over that, to reiterate. This is something that we shared at the information session, but it's a small snippet that really explains what PLE is.
People with lived experience have knowledge on a system, process, or issue from the perspective of being impacted. People with lived experience are needed to improve results within organizations. People with lived experience have a personal understanding of the inequities and solutions to bridge inequities in a system. People with lived experience of inequities play an integral role in helping organizations relate to communities. The People with Lived Experience team are engaging global and local partners for best practices. People with lived
So we're gonna go into checking in with you. How does people with lived experience show up in your community currently? How do we self-identify in this group? Do you see yourself as a person with lived experience expertise? Just give me a thumbs up, a head nod. Are you connected with people that have lived experience expertise? Okay, awesome. I'm seeing some head nods. Great. So this next step is centered around researching existing engagement. So I've heard someone mention and lift up civic engagement. We need some better practices in Asheville. There's still a lot of people that were left out of the conversation. You know, some people got the time wrong. Some people got the dates wrong. Some people got the time frame wrong. So I want us to have some conversation and looking at the overall framework, especially when it comes from a municipality leading community engagement, will be different in many cases on how the community experiences community engagement. So next slide, please. What I like to do for anyone that if this language is new to you is kind of break it down in its most basic form, right? If we look at 2-4 with, an organization or institution may engage with you by doing something to you. They may bring you a needs assessment. That's usually done at the county level, so you may have experienced that before. They want to extract information, so they're coming in with a set of questions they're asking. When we transition into really getting into the equity lens of spectrums of engagement, then we're getting more to the 4. So we're transitioning to, some of us may find ourselves in the 4 lane. The 4 lane is when the community is involved from a consultant level. Key community members may be brought into a space to have a seat at the table as an advisor. And depending on how the table is formed, that could be with or without power. When we're transitioning into the with, which is where we want to be, it's when the community is co-leading and co-designing. So not only is it a open door, not only is it a seat at the table, not only is it an inquiry of your expertise, but there is an open space for meaningful engagement where we are co-designing what's happening in our community. We are a part of it, we see ourselves in it, and that's where more sustainability sits. I see Daniel has a question. Why wasn't any of these addressed by the former mayor of Asheville? These problems have been going on for a long time, and I feel as if it doesn't matter, and then I know what's going to be done. We are here today unapologetically with an open mind to experience where we are. We can spend this time trying to put out fires of the past, or we can really maximize our time while we're here and see where we can go. So I want to honor your question. I don't have the pleasure of knowing the past mayor, so I can't, in my facilitator role, answer that. But I do welcome that to sit in the parking lot, and maybe we can get through that and what we're talking about today to get to an outcome that not only you will be satisfied with, Daniel, but people that represent you, who you're here in this space representing, and those of us that are in fellowship and in communion with you on this journey. I hope that'll give us enough space. I will welcome us to have some engagement towards the end about that a little bit deeper. Let's just see what we can do with where we are. So here we are with another community engagement spectrum. Now this example is actually utilized. This is, it's, how could I best put it? This is facilitated from a city leader perspective. So this is a strategy of engagement that targets how we identify and connect with youth. I am not sure if we have anyone that self-identifies as youth on the call, but hey, this is how people are being trained to engage with you, right? So it actually is supposed to read left to right, right? But I always encourage you to read the backwards because that's how it should be, right? So even in engaging young people, how we do it as leaders in whatever representation of organization you have an opportunity again to kind of look at these spectrums, see what hits for you and see what is missing, and then see what'll work for Asheville and all these pieces that you all bring to what will be meaningful for you. So this has this trajectory of community serving, like, and this is impact versus intention, right? So you have the intention of doing good, community serving, coming in, you're getting that community input. Your community engagement kind of looks like community informing because you're really not giving that space for a relationship to hear. It's kind of like, no, this is what we're doing. And we got to go. And then it's kind of like sometimes an afterthought. And to Rob's point, if we're not community led from the beginning, the budget's already made, the things are set without our input when it comes to how people get paid or how money gets into the hands of those that are on the ground in community doing the work. And so we want to break those barriers in how we're in this academy because we want to identify where the gaps are as to who's not at the table, where the table at, is the table open, how you get in there. We want to be able to navigate that theory to practice and what we're talking about in our collectivism tonight and how we're building community in the academy. This is why we really push for you to get your friends and family, the people that you work with to come to this, because we want to intentionally over time work with the same group of people over these sessions because we want to build upon the last thing as we're going. And so that this isn't just sprinkling, but we are setting root and setting intention around this co-designing and being intentional with those that are present with us. Next slide, please. So spectrum of community engagement in this capacity, this is something that is taught to those that are in municipal office that go to training around community engagement. This is the model that some of those individuals are given to engage community, whether it be through their departments, if they're department leaders. This is actually modeled out of a municipality in Canada. So what you see here is the levels of informing, consulting, involving, collaborating, empowering. The prioritizing of the spectrum of engagement, this is kind of what they recommend and propose as the baseline. But one of their seasoned instructors that had been teaching this across the country for over 20 years kind of had her light bulb go off that maybe we were doing this the wrong direction. So she flipped this engagement and turned it the other way and was like, where can we be if we started with empowering and creating that space and identifying what strengths are already around us and then create that opportunity for collaboration. So I wanted to show this to you. When you look at this, how would you prioritize engagement as a resident? If you saw this and you looked at which one you needed to start with first, which one resonates to you? I'm gonna open your mic and share, like, which one of these resonates with you? Rob?
Yeah, so I definitely would have to agree with your with going in the opposite order, empowering. That's a large piece of what we're trying to do around the current process is giving community members sole decision-making authority over a new program or service. And it's going to take a lot of resources to even do that and create this system, which we have mapped out. And the issue was, from different elected officials not necessarily wanting to give decision-making power to the community. It's like, no, they should only be allowed to submit recommendations. They shouldn't have decision-making power. They shouldn't have decision-making over this land and money. They should have to create plans and submit them to us. And it's like, you're not empowering them. And we've done this for decades. So that is exactly what it is that I'm trying to implement with empowering the community and creating and providing an apparatus to where they can have decision-making power and not need anybody to represent them. They don't need leaders. They've got their own voices and they can think. And I have trust and faith in community that they have the solutions already to the problems that they face.
I think I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
I think one of the things that I do is try to be a realist. We are working with elected officials, and I'd say right now it borders between it's collaboration. We're dealing with a lot of power players. I am currently who happen to be in the majority community. A lot of it has to do with syntax. We've got goals, but we are going to have to be very deliberate and very surgical. I am anyway, about what I do to get the results that I want. Empowerment comes when you have access to resources to provide the tangibilities that you need, and you have to be astute enough to speak the language of those who you need the resources from to become empowered. That is how power eschews to the people. You have to be, I'm not going to say, you have to be very deliberate, you have to be very surgical, and you have to be very cognizant of the fact that these elected officials are statutorily elected and they have statutory authority. And even though you may not bowl them over, you have to be very deliberate about what you're saying to them. And you have to be very tactful about it. People understand, one thing that I've seen is that they understand data. They understand when you got a group of people, and I've had to learn the hard way by being excluded and singled out, there's safety in numbers. And so what I've had to do is organize, like you say, Shemekka, about empowerment and the community. I've had to go engage the community and people who have access to greater numbers of people than I do to bring to bear on city council to get some of the things passed that we want. And so it's realizing and recognizing when to say what, because these people have egos. These elected leaders do have egos, and they are human beings. So you have to know how to be tactful, as well as have a plan of action, a strategy that gets at what you need. So I would say that right now we are collaborating with other community partners of all stripes. We're collaborating with elected city leaders and county leaders, trying to be that force that speaks to what their needs are. And sometimes when you wake up, like we did with the community benefits agreement, they rebuffed it. And then when they went to TDA and advocated for a percentage of those funds, we could not really believe that they were actually listening. And there's several things like the elected school board. I mean, after it took some time, but we eventually got what we wanted. But most of all, we got respect and credibility so that we can go back. So that's all I have to add. And I'm sorry for being long-winded.
No, thank you. I appreciate you both adding to the space. It definitely is in alignment with where we are, because we have to hear those truths from those lived experiences. And what I would emphasize based on what you all shared is when you get it in writing, when there's a policy in place to establish it, it holds a lot more weight to us challenging in conversation or being combative in conversation. I've known many a great leaders that have been blacklisted by their own government and not heard in communities. So I think you spoke truth to power, that there's a way of being, understanding a language that's different. And it's kind of like back in the day overseas, when you used to wear wigs in court, like that you played a role, you did your thing. So thank you for lifting that up. Grant, I wanted to acknowledge your hand, and then we'll go to Ty after you.
Yeah, briefly, that I looked at participatory budgeting when I think it's been around probably for longer than I became aware of it, about 20 years ago. But the empowering, giving community members sole decision-making authority over new programs and services, that's when you're elected to office. You get some authority. And I like task forces, and I'm all about civic engagement. And there's so much that can be done. But we don't go straight to that step. You want to, but there's a process. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be an ethical process, and it will be open to everyone. The equity of the power, you can observe it. You can say something about it as a decision comes up, and it's hard to catch it all. It's hard to be observant of everything just City of Asheville does, let alone the federal government does. But we can improve on this. And I'll give you an example real fast is broadband. I just watched Land to Sky Regional Council team members on a broadband initiative start to say, government-owned networks, well, that will never happen. So let's do a quick analysis with some of us from Western Carolina University, and we'll let you know what we decide. And I said, wait a minute. How about we open that up to Buncombe County and let people understand what a government-owned network is and the difference between Spectrum and AT&T bills and what internet with a government-owned network might be. And I won't go further, but that's just an example. That just happened. I think that was yesterday. I'm going to follow up on that though.
Thank you, Grant, for lifting that up. Ty, will you like to share at this time?
Yeah, so getting back to your original question, which was like, how would I prioritize this engagement? I think that it has to be coupled with the empowerment, powering and informing, like co-op. The rationale behind this is that even if you're to call a community a group of people who share interests or values or who share an environment, you have to address within Asheville and within America the fact that I, as a Black person, a Black male, I'm a forced community member to an extent in which I had to learn a lot of things in order to get to a point of competence. And it was through initiatives like the former Mayor Terry Bellamy's City of Asheville Youth Leadership Academy and self-tutelage, et cetera, that I was able to understand the truths of this nation, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think that it's right in any way, shape, or form to force a people who are special people like my people to pander to white supremacists. And that's somewhat of what I hear in the sense of, I hear it somewhat of as those people who remember how things work can never see how things will be. And revolution, innovation, those things come not from saying, oh, well, let me speak appropriately to the people whose entire reality is based on a maldistribution of resources that was created from my people's enslavement. And let me continue to work on their schedule and work on their time frame. But instead, let me actually empower the community and the people to speak their truth. Let me inform them that there are other political thoughts and ethos beyond liberal, democratic, and the civil rights ethos. There is a nationalist ethos within the Black community that's completely separate from the white nationalist ethos. So when it comes to us as Black people who are a nation of people who find ourselves forced to be a nation because we're galvanized by white supremacy and by people who have a comfortable standard because they're able to get returns that we can never get in this day and age legally, I don't think that it's appropriate to ever accept or try to codify or coddle these people by saying like, oh, we're gonna make ourselves cleanse to come into your space. Because the way that I view it entirely is Black Americans are fundamental into the creation of this nation, from it being able to have the power to split from Britain to all of the wars, et cetera, et cetera. The only difference is we couldn't pass it down generationally. So the fact that you sit here now and say, oh, well, let's come and like talk their language. No, you need to deal with the way that I feel, the way that I feel it. And that's the way that as a people, like we actually have respect for ourselves and real development. That's not us waiting on city government, but playing multi-tiered games in which we're working in our own community while using the government for what it is and holding them accountable. because the government has vestiges of the white supremacist structure, which is its foundation. So that's what I wanted to uplift. I feel that empowering has to come first and foremost, and it must come with the informing part. And I think that it ought to be the responsibility of the government to make its own sins something that people are taught and something that's blatantly aware. And when it comes to the future, I don't think that those same people who are, or the descendants of those people, ought to be the ones to decide what are going to replace things like Vance Monument and what are going to be the representations moving into the future, if we're being honest. So that's all I wanted to uplift.
Thank you so much, Ty, for lifting up this truth. This is so powerful, right? The reason why I say we have to create space, that we all are part of a body. We all have a role. We all have a calling. We all have a space. For example, if we all grew up to aspire to be a banker and everybody go try to get a job at the bank, then who's securing the bag across town in the grocery store? Who's securing the housing? Who's creating the safe space in the policy lane? Like, we all have these joints that are full of our experience, full of us being empowered in our calling, and we can come together with intent to maximize who we are, what we've called to do, and share that truth. So we welcome the truth of Ty. We welcome the truth of those that are going to city council, playing the game the way that it needs to be played to get policy change. Whatever there is, that whatever way you see yourself strengthened and empowered, we're not here to knock any ways down. We're not here to discourage you in trying new ways. We're not here to discourage your learning something different. Just know that we need all of that to create sustainable change, which I want to lift up. Michael said in the comments, to become empowered in the current climate, we find ourselves in. Reparations must include community control of city-owned land acquired via urban renewal. To be empowered is to have collective control of community destiny. To be empowered is to not be asked for input, but to be the one requesting input. Rob said, thank you, Mike. It looks like we have a conversation with Rob responding to Grant, and I'll catch up on those. But you made a very powerful point about, we know how it should be, but I'm not sure that we can honestly say we're there yet. So we are here to collect all these should be's, and I want you to stand in all your should be ofness. I know I just made that up, but we need you to stand in that truth. And so what I'm going to share with you next, because I want to be sensitive to time, we have a guest with us that is going to be sharing, Christine. Next slide, please. Again, I talked to you about engaging people with lived experience. We've talked about the importance of data. We've talked about the importance of sharing the ownership and lived truth and valuing that space. And so I want to share with you some work that I've been doing in community across the country now for a couple of years. We took the model of co-designing systems level transformation with centering people with lived experience expertise. So this isn't just for the budget. This isn't just for city council. This is system level transformation. And if you're not thinking on this level, then you got to connect with those who are, so that you all can create an ecosystem of this truth. So I want to share with you all the framework from my better practices that we've done research with, that we've co-designed, co-wrote with people with lived experience, facing inequities in community. And this is not to tell you that this is the one that's going to get it, but this is something I want you all to see what's possible. And I also wanted you to see that this was Black woman led and designed, so that you see it's someone that looks like you that came up with this framework as well, that have had the same inequities in their communities through the years. Next slide, please. So I'm gonna give you a high level overview, because you all have this. We could talk about it more in your leadership development strategy, if this is a framework you want to adapt or introduce or speak further about. But it really helps you look at the macro system of the institutions that are at work. We know that based on paper, the systems aren't built to be equitable. So we have to deconstruct how we're operating in that system. And so with that, we help amplify. If people with lived experience are part of the co-leadership and they're co-designing what's impacting not only the microsystems, meaning any community group that you are working with in community, that are you are the connector between that and an institution that may be focusing on whatever inequity it may be, whether it's poverty, whether it's substance abuse. We create a whole lot of words instead of using the word racism, and we know that. We'll call it health and health disparity. We'll call it social determinants of health. Whatever you know the name is, that's what we're dealing with right here. Next slide, please. So with this conceptual framework, we really challenge institutions to operate from a theory to practice standpoint, meaning a lot of times when you are academic heavy, you spend a lot of time creating theory, never really knowing what it means or feels like to actually experience what you're theorizing on a good day in all the privilege that you may have, right? What we did was flip the script on looking at this model and really broke down what it means to practice it. So we looked at some of the tools that were existing as far as habits of the heart. We talked about this in the information session. The first one is we're all in this together. So we created a shared agreement. We created touchstones of collaboration, the things that we all believe in. Though we can identify and lift up the things that make us different, we could do that on this call, yes. But if we can find touchstones of collaboration to share things that we want to intentionally work on and lift up, then that gives us an opportunity to put into practice what it means to see components like virtual and face-to-face engagement being leading towards the practice of what system transformation means. It means capacity building, not only in the community, but also internally. I like to say, making sure we got our kitchen clean. Our restaurant looks nice. The outward presentation is wonderful, but sometimes we don't want to let people into the kitchen because we don't want to admit and be transparent about where we are on the journey. And so we have this opportunity here when we look at the co-leadership, what's meaningful to you, to make sure that things are done with the equity lens. So engagement with the equity lens is something that is important and should be referenced and be a part of the foundation of how you all co-design leadership together. And then the community of solutions model is from the framework around health equity. That means leading from within, like I'm dealing with myself. I'm working on my own anti-Blackness issues. I'm working on my own anti-racism issues. Whatever challenges I'm dealing with myself, I am taking that inward look at myself and how I'm perceived, how other people see me, and how I want to be representative of whatever nation I'm called to represent, or community, or tribe, or village, however you're showing up in the space. But also leading together means that I'm going to look at how we can meaningfully work together. I'm going to find those ways, those loopholes, those maybe just one small thing that we got in common. That is the one thing that I'll recenter myself with when it will be easy for us to pick up division, when it'll be easy for us to be exclusive and separate from one another. And then the leading for outcomes, if we can find ourselves in the work that we're doing, then we create better outcomes for sustainability, not only in finding funding, but not in addition to that, creating sustainability as in I'm invested in wanting to end Black maternal death rates, because I'm working on health equity, because I'm working on outcomes. It's not just about coming to take a survey. If you can co-design the questions on the survey, then take your seat at the table. You know, take that power, take that co-design opportunity that you may have when we're looking at what this really looks like, theory to practice. Next slide, please. So examples of what we did practically to really create this community among us was centering basic things, having a shared email address so that people could reach out to us. If, for example, in this case, the city wanted to connect with our network of people in the community, then they're coming through someone that's holding this and then disseminating this information in the community. It's co-designing the agenda and meetings and emails, having that opportunity to give input and not just respond, but be preventative in the conversations that you're having, and creating those solutions, coming with solution to the conversation. I'm gonna pause here and check in on comments. I see Rob Thomas, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. We need land and money. Policies have been changed for decades, and our disparities get worse every year. Give us what matters, land and money. I totally agree with that. And I celebrate you standing in that. And I ask that you be open to know there's additional ways. Um, Honestly, if we are not ready to receive that land and know how to manage that land and keep that land alive, if we just go out here loosely and just go give land and not give the tools and resources to support the sustainability of caring for it, then we've misplaced a resource. So I'm not saying don't go after your land, yes, but also in the meantime, while you're waiting on that to happen, wait while serving for educating on farming, having these community conversations around how do you build equity on the land, whether you become a producer or you're producing for your community. So I welcome those kind of thoughts as we're moving forward, because it's going to be so important for us overall. Next slide, please. I want to open up space based on the frameworks that you all saw. What portions of the framework spoke to you? What stood out? What are some things that you feel like are absolutely important must-haves for whatever community engagement looks like with City of Asheville?
Listening to the people and not just going through the motions.
Mhm.
This is Brandon Oliver speaking. Not putting on a show or a front of being like, okay, yeah, well, we're doing this study or this study and this is what we found, but then doing what you want to do regardless. Like that's playing the people. And some people are okay with that because they think something's being done. But overall, it's just a cover up to not have to deal with the issues. Looks like they've been saying the issues are the supremacy and power doesn't want to give up power. And we're at the door asking for our rightful power, and they're not trying to hear that. So it's like,
Mm.
we can't just fall for that. We have to communicate. The communication piece, you have to take into account what the community wants because it's cool to get new apartments and a new park or a center and everything. But if that's not what the community wants, if that's not what's going to best serve the community, then it's like, yeah, all right, we appreciate that, but whatever. But that's me.
Thank you for lifting that up, Brandon. We definitely appreciate you speaking that truth. That is so important. Sometimes engagement is brought in at different levels, and sometimes we're not engaged soon enough, whether it was we don't know about it, we weren't invited to the table, or it was planned 10 to 20 years before you saw the manifestation of it. So all of those things are true and could be happening. It is happening all around us. I want to lift up, Rob says, transitional justice is the umbrella that reparation is under. If true transitional justice happens, everything that you stated, Shemekka, happens. Okay. So, with this truth, with transitional justice, whatever work is connected to that or tied in the community, however it's showing up, whatever the collective is in that development, I'm hoping that your experience in the academy gives you some opportunity to interchange those ideas and amplify what you're doing, what's working, what do you need help with. There may be someone on this call that can't give you land right now, but they can give you some space to talk about your vision. Like here, having this space to because again, I don't want to spend a lot of time complaining about what hasn't worked. I know we all have those stories and we have those truths, but while we're together, let's see what we can do with what's in our hands. A lot, I don't want us to be limited by waiting on someone to do something for us or give us something or fix something. We have to do everything we can with what's in our mind, what's in our heart, what's in our power, what's in our gifts, and exercising that until the change comes, until transformation comes, whatever that looks like and however it shows up. And it is going to be as unique and diverse as the people that you see every day. Everyone has an idea.
Yes.
It's just about getting the space, for people to believe in it, to agree with you and stand beside you, or in front of you, or working with you. Ty, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, so the part that actually sticks out the most to me is co-leadership, co-design, and what is it, the lived experience part. Something that always harps to me and gets to me is this idea of civic engagement and how narrow we perceive it a lot of times, where the lack of civic engagement in traditional ways is civic engagement. Me refusing to talk to you because I feel like you're a hypocrite is a form of engagement with my city if I'm creating an entire network that's able to provide resources for my community and we're self-circulating those resources and you're not able to touch them because of that. So I think that co-leadership, that co-design and the lived experience part, pulling in the people who we don't see represented here, pulling in the people who their civic engagement is the protest of not being civically engaged in a fraudulent system. So yeah, that's just all I thought.
Thank you for lifting that up. We certainly appreciate that truth. Not getting engaged as a form of resistance, it may help momentarily, but what I've seen through time, I've seen over time and time again, those that don't engage are not heard because there are laws and statutes that encourage municipalities to make an effort to have public input. That's protected by statute. It has to happen. And so those that aren't present, those that are using their absence as a resistance, it is a form of resistance, but it also does hold weight of that voice not being heard. So I would encourage, if some people are choosing to operate in that way, that they send their message or share their truths in some other way, alternatively. Bernard, I saw you had your hand raised. I wanted to reference you.
Thanks for the recognizing, but go ahead with the conversation. I'll come back later, even though our time is running rapidly. We need to just make sure that we give all of the people that are on tonight the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share with you some existing ways to engage with the city of Asheville. And I guess with the show of hands, I just want to just see, are you connected with the communication and public engagement department? Like, are you on the AVL alerts? Like, have you heard of it? Just thumbs up if you are. If you have not connected with that, please get on that listserv so that you can know of meetings that are coming up. It's auto alerts you can sign up for. And then there's also a City of Asheville engagement hub. With that engagement hub, we don't have time to go to these links tonight, but
webinar, what's up?
Please make sure that you take an opportunity to check them out. And then more specifically around this equity focused budget planning process that we're in right now, there is a public input page on that will give you direct information as well. So with that, I wanted to open the space to Christine. Next slide, please. And welcome Christine of Amplify Consulting into the space as she shares with you an opportunity around the budget engagement.
Hello, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and attention. Thank you, Shemekka, for facilitating this space. I've just been enjoying just hearing some of the conversation. Also have been enjoying seeing some familiar faces from August and September. If you do remember, we were out there virtually and in person just hosting these community listening sessions. And what we're going to be doing starting next week is hosting some equity focused budget sessions. And as Shemekka said, this is to carry forth the conversation that we're having around community safety and public safety, but really a broader conversation around advancing racial equity in general. We've been working with the Asheville budget team over the past few weeks to develop their budget priorities. And, the message really is we're doing as much as we can with what we have in terms of budget, but we want to make sure that the budget decisions that are happening are going to be community informed. and the community is engaging around these budget conversations. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat to the public input site so that you all can go ahead and engage with these through your registrations. Go ahead and register for these sessions because they're coming up very soon. And if you are unable to attend, make sure that you're sharing them with your neighbors. In addition to these sessions, there's also going to be a survey that's going to be developed. So if you're unable to attend, you still have an opportunity to weigh in on these topics via the survey. Yeah, and the budget sessions, I have a feeling they're going to be hosted, similar to this, where it's going to be a forum where you're going to be able to share your thoughts openly, a virtual forum just like this. And we're just so looking forward to hearing from you all.
Thank you so much, Christine. We certainly appreciate your presence here. And I also wanted to lift up that Jeremy has put his contact information. He is a new member of the CAPE team, and he's put his email and phone number in the chat. So please definitely check him out, introduce yourself to him when you can, and see how you all can set some intention around engagement.
Yeah, and let me know if there are any questions around any of the information that I just presented. I can stay and answer some questions. I see your hand is up. I see some hands are up. Shemekka, do you want to?
Yes, I see Grants. Is there? Yes, Grant.
Okay. So I was watching, I don't think it's these, it was a regular budget session. Mm-hmm. And that was this week. And at one point they mentioned curb cut access, and they said this is a reference to the disability community. And I had to point out that City of Asheville doesn't really have a persons with disabilities inclusion strategy. And as I think something should be done for Asheville's African Americans, but something called the Equal Protection Clause lets our policies serve persons with disabilities too, because they are a protected class, just like African Americans. So as they go further and further and exclude persons with disabilities who are all genders, all races, all sexual orientations and creeds, you're kind of in a feedback loop. They're kind of increasing the amount of exclusion. And again, Rob, I'm saying you don't feel very protected. I'm talking about persons with disabilities, but we'll see. Hopefully they'll change course. But there's something called the Equal Protection Clause, and it applies to persons with disabilities, and it can apply with City of Asheville policies regarding equity inclusion.
Thank you so much, Grant. Was there another question or a question related to Christine's upcoming engagement? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Christine. Next slide, please. Next slide. So I want us to take a moment to look at what we're going to be doing over our time before our next session. You can go to the next slide where there's more content. We're looking at a way that we can meaningfully work together to create solution-based framework for how we engage meaningfully and equitably with the city, whether it's the city of Asheville as a municipality, whether it's a local foundation that, whether it's Dogwood, whether it's a healthcare system. for whatever reason, they're coming into the community and asking questions and wanting information. And so I wanted to create an opportunity for us to be intentional in finding solutions or amplifying solutions that already exist in the community. So what I'm asking is that in the priority of what we were doing around creating intergenerational relationships, I wanted to not only see what we can do intentionally together among us, but also invite other generations that may not be represented, especially with the youth. And I'm asking for you to kind of connect with either people in your household, in your community, if you're here representing a group. If you could partner with us between March 12th and May 5th to identify at least one solution for engagement. We can talk about what's wrong and what's not working, but if it's something that already exists that you think will be helpful, I want us to create some time to lift up how we can meaningfully engage and create a collective strategy based on us engaging our communities that we may represent and bringing it back into the team. I wanted to lift up, please, if we could, I want to mind that there are comments going on in chat, and I don't want to dishonor you not having the space to know how we're engaging. But within the last 4 minutes we have left, I wanted you to get a chance to read this, to see if this is something that you can connect with so that we know how we can meaningfully engage when we come back on May 6th. Part of this academy is really pushing from theory to practice. So it's not about just talking about what could work, but how can we be intentional on setting a standard for this to be the way of being with us in community. Does anyone have any questions about what this ask is around this challenge that we have before us for participating in the academy?
I do.
Yes. You're muted.
Excuse me, I didn't mean to leave myself muted. Um,
Okay, we'll come back to you. No problem. Terry, would you like to share?
Yes, I just first let me say good evening and thank you so very much for your leadership on these important, impactful issues that Asheville has been grappling with for years and have been addressing in various ways. So my question is, you presented this opportunity for us to share this information. How do you want to get this information back to you? Do you want it prior to the meeting, or do you want us to bring it to the meeting as part of the discussion?
Great question. So when we come back together for May 6th and May 13th, this will be the report outs. And I want you to report out what you found or what your group came up with, however, whatever medium you want to use. So if you make a video, you say, here's a video, here's a PowerPoint. I'm just talking. I just want to tell you about it. Whatever is comfortable for you. I want to create a space so that we can talk about the solutions that we came up with and spent some time having these community conversations around. Great question. Mr. Bernard?
Yes, earlier on, Daniel Young asked a question about the previous mayor. And since we have one here, can that question be addressed?
Yes. Daniel, would you? Okay, go ahead.
If you want Daniel to repeat his question, that's fine.
Yeah, I can repeat the question. I was asking, when you was the mayor, why wasn't none of this stuff addressed then, and why wasn't none of it fixed? Why you had the opportunity to fix it? I mean, you know what all we've been going through to our whole communities, and wasn't nothing addressed by you or done for the community, for the Black community.
So, Mr. Young, I appreciate your question, but I completely and wholeheartedly disagree that there was nothing done. During my tenure as a member of the City Council, as well as Mayor of the City of Asheville, I had the profound pleasure of working with community leaders to address a myriad of activities and issues impacting not only our community and our neighborhoods, but also the national landscape. And while it would be easy here to just rattle off things that we were able to do, I'll say that we set the framework or the opportunity for our community to advance in a lot of different situations. And I think Ty said it best when he talked about, he referenced CALA, which is the City of Asheville Youth Leadership Academy, which has in the last 10 years helped hundreds of Asheville natives who look like us actually not only finish high school, but also go to college. And some of them are coming back to our community and adding to the benefits of our community. When I look at the issue of home ownership and opportunities within the community, being able to help the number of African Americans actually purchase their home in urban renewal communities and otherwise. So while it's easy to say what we hadn't done, there are opportunities to improve, but the work that we started or continued, it is making an impact and is transforming this community. I'm not saying that we were perfect, but by far means we were able to move the needle forward within this community under my leadership. But I'm happy to engage you at a true a level where you really want to hear solutions and what we're able to do with data. I can provide that for you. But thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much. And hold on. I just want to say thank you for sharing that truth. And I celebrate your presence in this space, Terry, because you give some lived experience expertise as a civic leader that can give some insight around what the inside of the institution looks like, you know. And before we berate on what didn't happen during that time, let's look at how we can maximize this opportunity on what we can learn together with intention moving forward. So I thank you for I honor you responding, but I do not want to isolate any of us to feel like it's okay to go after civic leaders that are in the audience here participating in the academy as a participant. So I want to honor your question, Daniel. We got an opportunity to hear a response. I thank you all for giving some space for that exchange. These exchanges should be intentionally having and co-led in the community by some of you to have these conversations with intention of let's stick to the solutions. And so I'll reiterate that because I know we are at the end of our time for today, but we are getting together again for those that are looking for leadership engagement strategy coaching. That is going to be April 13th and 15th. April 13th will be the group. If you want some additional support, you can sign up for a block of that time on the 15th for a one-on-one, because we want to make sure that we're giving you access to whatever strategies have worked nationally, tools, resources, and support, and making those connections for you all as you all are leading this work in the several banners that you all are lifting up, whether you're a BIPOC representative, whether you're a representative of people with disabilities, or whether you, however you're showing up with lived experience expertise. We welcome you for that. For those of you that'll be continuing on for us, your report outs will happen on May 6th or May 13th. If you have questions, we have elders in this room that may want to connect and be a part of your team. If you need some young people, if you don't have young people at home, reach out to the Youth Leadership Academy. They helped me with youth engagement last fall, so that is a good ally and partnership to have. I really want to thank you all for your time today, and please check any questions you may have. Please reach out to me directly. You know, I'm open. I've been having one-on-one sessions with some of you. So we're here to build. We're here to be meaningful and intentional. And I want to make sure that we're supplying whatever we can to bring this collaboration together for meaningful engagement here in the city of Asheville. We'll close out with a jam so we can get our energy right before we go back to our families, before we step out of this advocacy space. This is a jam that one of the co-founders of PLE Institute wrote around opportunities around systemic change. So we'll close out with that.
We gotta change the world. We gotta change the world. Yeah. People with lived experience institute, source of solution, unapologetic truth. radical leaders, because people matter. Yeah, because people matter. We have lived through iniquities. We know the challenges. We have the solutions. We address voice. We address power dynamics. We address equities. System transformation through explicit truth. Explicit truth is bold. Explicit truth is uncomfortable. We are not here to make you comfortable, but we're here for change. Explicit truth is uncomfortable. We are not here to make you comfortable, but we're here for change. People with lived experience institute. Our community wants to live. Our community wants to thrive. People with lived experience. Leading with unapologetic truth. Radical leadership for change. We know the challenges. We have the solutions. We address voice. We address power dynamics. We address equities. System transformation through explicit truth. Explicit truth is bold.